When Evelyn Harrow stepped off that train in Colorado territory, she wasn't a blushing bride full of hope. She was a punchline. Her own family had sent her west as a joke, a cruel substitute for her beautiful sister, certain the rugged rancher waiting on that platform would take one look at the wrong woman and send her packing. They'd place bets on how fast she'd come crawling back. But what happened next? Nobody saw it coming. Not her family, not society, and definitely not Evelyn herself. Before we dive into this incredible story, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. Now, let's begin. The Boston rain came down in sheets that April morning in 1875, turning the cobblestones slick and the already gray city even darker. Evelyn Harrow stood at her bedroom window on the third floor of the Harrow mansion, watching water stream down the glass like tears she'd stopped allowing herself years ago. She was 28 years old, a spinster by society's standards, an embarrassment by her family's. "Evelyn!" Her stepmother's voice cut through the house like a knife through butter. "Get down here this instant!" Evelyn closed her eyes. Nothing good ever followed that tone. She made her way down the curved staircase, her simple gray dress a stark contrast to the ornate wallpaper and crystal chandelier that marked the Harrow family's wealth. Money they never let her forget came from her father's second marriage, not from her deceased mother's modest inheritance. In the parlor, her stepmother Margaret stood with Evelyn's half-sister Celeste, who at 22 was everything Evelyn supposedly wasn't: petite, blonde, delicate as porcelain, the kind of beauty that made men stumble over their own feet. Celeste was smiling, which meant whatever was about to happen would be at Evelyn's expense. "Sit down," Margaret commanded, gesturing to a chair positioned like an accused person's seat at trial. Evelyn remained standing. Small rebellions were all she had left. Margaret's lips thinned. "Suit yourself? I'll make this brief. You're leaving Boston." The words hung in the air. Evelyn's heart lurched, though she kept her face blank. Years of practice. "A rancher out in Colorado territory has been corresponding with us," Margaret continued, examining her nails as if discussing something as mundane as the weather. "A Mr. Riker Callahan, quite wealthy, from what we understand, owns thousands of acres. He's been writing to request Celeste's hand in marriage." Celeste giggled behind her fan. "Naturally," Margaret went on, "Celeste cannot possibly be expected to bury herself in some godforsaken wilderness. She has prospects here. Real prospects. Thomas Whitmore is about to propose any day now." Evelyn waited. There was more. There was always more. "So we've written to Mr. Callahan accepting his proposal." Margaret's smile could have cut glass. "But we're sending you instead." The room tilted. "What?" "You heard me perfectly well. You'll travel to Colorado as Celeste. Well, we haven't exactly lied. We simply haven't corrected Mr. Callahan's assumptions. When he sees what he's actually getting—" Margaret laughed, a sound like breaking china. "Well, I imagine you'll be on the next train back to Boston within hours. It will teach him not to conduct courtships through letters with women he's never met." "You're sending me as bait for your joke?" Evelyn's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I'm giving you an opportunity to be useful for once," Margaret snapped. "Your father agrees. Consider it your contribution to this family after all we've done for you." "All you've done—" Evelyn bit off the words. There was no point. They'd rewritten history so many times that truth had become irrelevant. Never mind that this house had belonged to Evelyn's mother. Never mind that Evelyn had spent her childhood being told she was too tall, too plain, too difficult, too much of everything wrong, and not enough of anything right. "The train leaves Monday," Margaret said. "Pack appropriately. Try not to embarrass us more than necessary, though I suppose that's asking the impossible." Celeste giggled again. "Can you imagine? Poor Mr. Callahan. He's expecting me and he gets that." She waved her hand dismissively at Evelyn. Something inside Evelyn cracked, not broke. She'd broken years ago, but cracked in a different way, like ice beginning to thaw. "I'll go," she said quietly. Margaret blinked. "What?" "I said I'll go." Evelyn looked directly at her stepmother. "To Colorado. I'll marry your rancher." "Don't be absurd. The moment he sees you, then I'll come back. But I'll go. Because anything was better than this. Even humiliation 1,500 miles away was better than this slow suffocation." Margaret studied her with narrowed eyes, looking for the trick, the trap. Finding none, She shrugged. Fine. It will be entertaining either way. That night, Evelyn packed her 2 small trunks. She didn't own much. Margaret had seen to that over the years. A few dresses, all practical and plain. Her mother's silver brush. 3 books she'd managed to hide. The medical texts she'd bought with money earned from sewing, studying them by candlelight when everyone else slept. Her father appeared at her door as she was folding her last shirtwaist. Nathan Harrow looked older than his 56 years, worn down by a demanding second wife and his own weakness. Evelyn, he cleared his throat. Your stepmother tells me you've agreed to this arrangement. Do I have a choice? He had the grace to look away. You could refuse. And stay here? She didn't need to elaborate. They both knew what her life in this house consisted of. Colorado is rough country, dangerous. Nothing like Boston. I know. This man, Callahan, he's a stranger. You don't know anything about him. Evelyn folded a woolen skirt, pressing the creases sharp. I know he lives far from here. That's enough. Her father shifted his weight. I'm not a complete fool, Evelyn. I know Margaret is difficult, and I know you've borne the brunt of it, but this seems extreme. Now she looked at him, really looked at him. You've let her treat me like a servant in my own mother's house for 16 years. You've watched Celeste mock me at every turn. You've said nothing when Margaret forbade me from attending school, from seeing friends, from having any life at all. And now you're concerned? I've provided for you. You've kept me alive. That's not the same as providing for me. Her voice didn't rise. She was too tired for anger. I'm going to Colorado, Father. Whether to marry a stranger or to return in shame, I don't much care. Either way, I'll have seen something beyond these walls. He left without another word. Monday morning came cold and damp. The hired carriage waited outside to take Evelyn to the train station. Margaret and Celeste appeared in the foyer, dressed for a morning social call, already moving on with their day. Do try to maintain some dignity when he rejects you, Margaret said, adjusting her gloves. The Harrow name still means something. Evelyn picked up her traveling case. Does it? She didn't wait for an answer. At the station, the platform bustled with travelers and vendors and the constant hiss of steam engines. Evelyn had never been on a train before, never been allowed to go anywhere that required one. She handed her ticket to the conductor, found her seat in the second-class car, and watched through smudged glass as Boston began to slide away. Good riddance, she thought. The journey took 4 days. 4 days of constant motion, changing trains, brief stops in cities that grew progressively smaller and rougher around the edges. The other passengers changed too. Fewer fine ladies in silk, more families with hard faces and harder hands, heading west for land, for opportunity, for escape. Evelyn kept to herself mostly. Read her books, watched America transform outside her window from cultivated green to wild brown. The mountains appeared on the 3rd day, jagged and massive and so unlike anything she'd ever seen that she pressed her face to the glass like a child. A woman across the aisle noticed. First time west? Evelyn nodded. Going to meet someone? You could say that. Evelyn hesitated. A rancher. He's expecting me. The woman's weathered face softened. Mail-order bride? Something like that. Well, the woman settled back in her seat. Word of advice? The frontier ain't Boston, and that's a good thing. Out here, what you can do matters more than who you were. Man don't care if you can pour tea proper. He cares if you can shoot straight, birth a calf, and not faint at the sight of blood. I can do all 3, Evelyn said quietly. The woman looked surprised, then approving. Then you might just make it. The train pulled into Copper Ridge, Colorado Territory on a Thursday afternoon. The station was little more than a covered platform beside dirt roads and wooden buildings that looked like a strong wind might blow them over. The air smelled different here, sharp and clean, tinged with pine and dust. Evelyn stepped onto the platform, her legs unsteady after days of travel. She smoothed her traveling dress, tucked a loose strand of dark hair back into her bun, and looked around. A man stood near the edge of the platform. Tall, taller than her, which was rare. Broad-shouldered in a way that spoke of physical labor, not tailored padding. Dark hair touched with gray at the temples. Maybe 35, maybe 40. Hard to tell with the sun and wind lines around his eyes. He was scanning the arriving passengers with an expression that managed to be both hopeful and nervous. Riker Callahan. Had to be. Evelyn picked up her case and walked toward him, each step feeling like crossing a bridge that might collapse. He saw her coming. His eyes went from hopeful to confused to something else. Disappointment? No. Uncertain. He was trying to figure out if she was who he thought she was. Mr. Callahan? Her voice came out rougher than intended. He removed his hat. Yes, ma'am. You're... He stopped, started again. I'm here to meet Celeste Harrow. I know. Evelyn set down her case. Might as well get this over with. There's been a situation. Celeste isn't coming. I'm Evelyn Harrow, her half-sister. His face did something complicated, several emotions fighting for dominance. I understand if you want to send me back on the next train, Evelyn continued, proud that her voice didn't shake. My family, they thought it would be amusing to send the wrong sister. They assumed you'd be horrified and refuse me, and they could tell all of Boston about the backwards frontier rancher who couldn't tell the difference. I'm sorry you were dragged into their entertainment. Riker Callahan stood very still. Then he looked at her, really looked at her, not the quick dismissive glance she was used to, but a full examination that took in her height, her plain face, her worn dress, her calloused hands gripping the case handle. They did this as a joke? His voice was quiet, but something dangerous lurked underneath. Yes. Sent you out here knowing I was expecting someone else just to make a fool of me? And me. Mostly me, actually. They find me quite funny. His jaw tightened. What kind of family does that? Evelyn almost laughed. Mine, apparently. A long moment passed. The train whistled behind them, preparing to depart. Last chance for her to get back on, return to Boston, face the smug satisfaction of Margaret and Celeste's cruelty. Well, Riker finally said. Joke's on them, then. Evelyn blinked. I'm sorry? They meant to humiliate us both. I don't particularly care to give them that satisfaction. He picked up her case like it weighed nothing. You came all this way. Least I can do is offer you dinner and a place to sleep before you decide what you want to do next. You don't have to, Miss Harrow. He looked at her again with those steady gray eyes. I've been ranching in Colorado Territory for 12 years. I've dealt with blizzards, droughts, rustlers, and a barn fire that nearly killed me and every horse I owned. Your family's pettiness doesn't rank in my top 10 problems. Come on, my wagon's this way. He started walking, carrying her case, not looking back to see if she followed. Evelyn stood frozen for 3 heartbeats. Then she grabbed her other small trunk and hurried after him. The wagon was functional. Wooden bed, 2 horses that looked better cared for than most people Evelyn knew. Riker loaded her bags, then offered his hand to help her up to the bench seat. His palm was calloused, warm, steady. They rode in silence through town. Copper Ridge wasn't much. A main street with a general store, saloon, blacksmith, small church, scattering of houses. People stopped what they were doing to stare at the wagon passing through. They know about me? Evelyn asked. They know I went to meet someone off the train. Riker kept his eyes on the road. Small town. Everyone knows everything, or thinks they do. They'll talk. They always talk. I stopped caring about that years ago. The ranch sat 5 miles outside town, nestled in a valley with mountains rising purple and massive in the distance. The house was larger than Evelyn expected. 2 stories, solid construction with a wide porch and real glass windows. Barns and outbuildings dotted the property. Cattle grazed in distant pastures. It was beautiful in a stark, honest way that made her chest hurt. Riker pulled the wagon to a stop near the house. This is Copper Ridge Ranch, 3,000 acres, 200 head of cattle currently, hoping to expand. I've got 4 men who work full-time and a few others who help during busy seasons. He helped her down from the wagon, then carried her bags to the porch. I'll have Martha. She comes up from town 3 days a week to cook and clean. I'll have her prepare the spare bedroom upstairs. You can rest, clean up from travel. We'll talk later about what comes next. Mr. Callahan, Riker. Out here, we don't stand on formality. Riker. The name felt strange in her mouth. Why are you being kind to me? He paused with his hand on the door. Why wouldn't I be? Because I'm not who you wanted. I'm not beautiful or charming or refined. I'm too tall and too plain and too... She stopped, hating how easily the familiar words came. To what? To everything they always said I was. Riker set down the bags, turned to face her fully. Miss Harrow, Evelyn, I'm going to tell you something, and you can believe it or not, but it's the truth. I didn't write those letters looking for a pretty face. I wrote them looking for a partner. Someone strong enough to handle frontier life. Someone with a working brain in their head. Your sister, Celeste, her letters were... He paused, choosing words carefully. Pleasant, but empty, like reading a recipe that was all sugar and no substance. Evelyn stared at him. I don't know you, he continued. You don't know me, but I know you traveled 1,500 miles to escape a family cruel enough to use you as ammunition in their jokes. That takes courage. And I know you're standing here now, back straight, not crying or begging or falling apart. That takes strength. He picked up the bags again. So yeah, I'm being kind, because so far you seem like you deserve it. He went inside, leaving Evelyn standing on the porch, with her mouth slightly open and her eyes burning with tears she absolutely refused to let fall. The house interior was clean, masculine, sparse, furniture that was functional rather than decorative. No curtains on the windows. A stone fireplace that looked well used. Books on a shelf. Actual books, not just decorative spines. Riker showed her upstairs to a small bedroom with a bed, dresser, and washstand. Pumps in the kitchen if you need water, privy's out back. I'll get Martha to bring up some hot water for washing. I can get my own water. Didn't say you couldn't, but you've been on a train for 4 days. Let someone help for once. He left her there. Evelyn sat on the bed, a real bed, not a broken-down cot like Margaret had given her, and looked around the simple room. Sunshine came through the uncurtained window, falling in golden bars across the wooden floor. For the first time in years, she was somewhere her stepmother wasn't. Somewhere Celeste's mocking voice couldn't reach. Somewhere she could breathe without permission. She lay back on the bed and closed her eyes. When she woke, the sun was lower, and there were voices downstairs. Evelyn splashed water on her face from the basin someone had brought up, true to Riker's word, and made her way down. In the kitchen, Riker stood with an older woman who had flour on her apron and shrewd eyes that took in Evelyn's appearance in one sharp glance. This is Martha Fletcher, Riker said. Martha, this is Evelyn Harrow. Miss Harrow. Martha wiped her hands on her apron. Riker says you've had a long journey. Yes, ma'am. Well, dinner's almost ready. You like stew? I like anything I don't have to cook myself, Evelyn said honestly, then winced. Sorry. That sounded like someone who's been doing too much cooking for people who don't appreciate it, Martha finished. Don't worry, girl. I know the type. She shot Riker a look. She's staying in the spare room? For now, Riker said. For now, Evelyn echoed. I haven't decided. We haven't discussed. Eat first, Martha said firmly. Nothing makes sense on an empty stomach. The stew was thick with meat and vegetables and better than anything that had come out of the Harrow kitchen in years. Evelyn tried to eat slowly, with the manners drilled into her, but hunger won. She cleaned her bowl and accepted a second helping without pretense. Riker ate across from her, not talking much, but not uncomfortable with the silence either. Martha bustled around, then excused herself to head back to town before dark. She seems nice, Evelyn said after Martha left. She's the toughest woman I know. Buried 2 husbands and raised 5 kids mostly on her own. Doesn't suffer fools and doesn't pull punches. She approved of me? How do you figure? She gave me a second helping without me asking. That's approval in kitchen language. Riker almost smiled. You know kitchen language? I know a lot of things I'm not supposed to know. Evelyn pushed her empty bowl away. Mr. Call, Riker, we should probably discuss the situation. Probably. My family expects me to return on the next train in disgrace. You'd be well within your rights to send me. This whole thing is mortifying and unfair to you. What do you want to do? The question caught her off guard. What? You, Evelyn, not your family, not what's expected, not what's proper. What do you want? No one had ever asked her that before. Not once in 28 years. I want... She stopped, started again. I don't want to go back to Boston. Then don't. It's not that simple. Why not? Because you were expecting someone else, someone better, someone... Let me stop you right there. Riker leaned back in his chair. I'm going to be honest, and maybe it's not polite, but polite hasn't been working for either of us. Those letters I got? Celeste's letters? They were pretty words about tea parties and fashion and society events, things I don't care about and never will. I wrote back because I'm 37 years old, I live in the middle of nowhere, and I figured a wife would be better than dying alone. Romance seemed like a luxury I couldn't afford. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at his land turning purple in the dusk. But when you stepped off that train today, looking tired and angry and scared but pretending you weren't any of those things, when you told me straight out what your family did and didn't make excuses for them, that was the first honest thing anyone said to me in months, maybe years. Eveline's throat felt tight. You're saying you want me to stay. I'm saying I want you to have a choice, real choice, not your family's version of it. He turned back to face her. Stay here. Not as my wife, not yet. Just stay. Help Martha with the house if you want or don't. Read my books, ride my horses. Figure out who you are when nobody's telling you you're wrong. And if you decide you hate it here, I'll give you money for a train ticket wherever you want to go. Not back to Boston, unless that's really what you want, but somewhere new, fresh start. Why would you do that? Because someone should have done it for you a long time ago. The tears she'd been holding back all day finally came. Eveline tried to stop them, mortified, but they kept coming. She covered her face with her hands. She heard Riker move, felt him press a handkerchief into her hand. He didn't try to touch her, didn't offer empty comfort, just gave her space to fall apart. Sorry, she gasped when she could speak. I'm sorry, this is human, Riker said quietly. This is human, and you're allowed to be that. She cried until she was empty. Then she wiped her face, took a shaky breath, and looked at this stranger who'd shown her more kindness in one afternoon than her family had in years. I'll stay, she said. For now, I'll stay. Good, he nodded. Then welcome to Copper Ridge Ranch, Eveline Harrow. However long you're here, it's yours as much as mine. That night, lying in the small bedroom with moonlight streaming through the uncurtained window and mountain air cool on her skin, Eveline thought about the woman on the train. The frontier ain't Boston, and that's a good thing. Maybe she was right. Maybe the woman Boston called too much of everything was exactly enough for Colorado. And maybe, just maybe, Eveline was about to find out who she could be when nobody was telling her who she should be. The first morning, Eveline woke to roosters crowing and sunlight so bright it hurt her eyes. She'd forgotten to close the curtains, because there weren't any curtains. She lay there for a moment, disoriented, before remembering where she was. Colorado. A ranch. A stranger's house. Not Boston. She dressed quickly in one of her plain work dresses and made her way downstairs. The house was quiet. A note sat on the kitchen table in rough handwriting. Out with the cattle, coffee on the stove, make yourself at home. R. Make yourself at home. As if she'd ever been allowed to do that anywhere. Eveline poured coffee into a tin cup and walked out onto the porch. The morning air bit cold despite the sunshine, sharp and clean in a way Boston air never was. The mountains rose in the distance, snow still capping their peaks even though it was late April. Closer, she could see the barns, the corrals, cattle moving like slow brown rivers across the grassland. A rider appeared on the horizon, growing larger as he approached. Riker, sitting easy in the saddle like he'd been born there. He reined in near the porch, tipped his hat. Morning. You sleep all right? Better than I have in years, actually. Something flickered in his expression. Good. You eat? Just coffee. Martha left eggs and bread in the pantry. Help yourself. He swung down from the horse, tied the reins to the porch rail. I've got to ride fence line today, check for brakes. You'll be all right here on your own? I've been on my own most of my life. I'll manage. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. If you need anything, ring the bell by the barn. Someone will hear it. I won't need anything. Probably not. He untied the horse, prepared to mount again, then paused. Eveline, you don't have to prove anything here. You can just be. He rode off before she could figure out how to respond to that. The day stretched out strange and empty. Eveline was used to being busy, scrubbing floors. Margaret insisted were dirty, mending Celeste's endless wardrobe, cooking meals for a family that complained about everything she made, keeping herself useful enough that they couldn't justify throwing her out entirely. Here, there was nothing she had to do. No one watching to criticize. No tasks assigned with impossible standards. She wandered through the house first, careful not to touch too much, still feeling like an intruder. The parlor had comfortable furniture worn from use, not for show. The office held a desk buried under paperwork, ledgers, maps. The bookshelf made her stop. Agricultural texts, a few novels, poetry. Walt Whitman, which surprised her. A man who read Whitman wasn't quite what she'd expected. Outside, she explored the barns. The horses nickered at her approach. She counted 6 of them, all well fed, their stalls clean. Someone cared about these animals. The tack room smelled of leather and oil. Everything had its place, everything maintained. She found the chicken coop, collected eggs even though no one had asked her to, carried them back to the kitchen in her apron, made herself bread and eggs, ate standing at the counter because sitting alone at that big table felt too strange. By noon, she'd run out of things to explore. She stood on the porch again, looking out at all that empty land, and felt something crack open in her chest. Space. Actual space, not just physical, but something deeper. Room to breathe without someone monitoring every breath. It terrified her. She was still standing there when a wagon rattled up the drive. Martha climbed down, carrying a basket. "Afternoon. Figured you might want some company." "You don't have to." "Asha." "I know I don't have to. I want to." Martha headed for the kitchen without waiting for permission. "Come on, let's make bread. I'll teach you how we do it out here." "I know how to make bread." "Eastern bread, maybe. This is different." It wasn't really, but Evelyn didn't argue. She followed Martha inside and let the older woman boss her around the kitchen, measuring flour, kneading dough, keeping up a steady stream of conversation that didn't require much response. "Been in Copper Ridge 15 years, Martha said, punching down the risen dough. "Came out with my second husband. He died of pneumonia the first winter. Folks said I should go back east. I told them to mind their own business." "Why did you stay?" "Because back east I was Tom Fletcher's widow. Here I was just Martha. Could be whoever I wanted." She shaped the dough into loaves. "You running from something or towards something?" The question was casual, but Martha's eyes were sharp. "Both, maybe. I don't know yet." "Fair enough." Martha wiped her hands on her apron. "Riker's a good man. Bit rough around the edges, keeps to himself too much, works himself half to death. But he's decent. Won't lie to you, won't cheat you, won't raise a hand to you." "I wasn't worried about that." "You should be. Some men out here, they think a woman's just property they can order from a catalog. Riker's not like that. He's lonely, not desperate. There's a difference." Evelyn set the loaves in the pan. "He told me I could leave whenever I wanted, offered to pay my way." "That sound like a man who wants to trap you?" "No." "Then maybe give this place a chance. Give yourself a chance." Martha moved to the stove, started coffee. "What did you do back in Boston, before all this?" "Mostly whatever my stepmother told me to do." "Before that? What did you want to do?" No one had ever asked that either. "I wanted to study medicine. Be a doctor, maybe, or a nurse. But women out here do all kinds of things they don't do back east," Martha interrupted. "We've got no choice. Doctors half a day's ride away on a good day. Can't wait for permission when someone's bleeding out or burning with fever. You know medicine?" "I studied what I could. Books mostly. I helped deliver my neighbor's baby once when the midwife couldn't get there in time." Martha's eyebrows rose. "Baby make it?" "Both of them did." "Then you know more than most." Martha poured 2 cups of coffee, handed one to Evelyn. "Keep studying. People here will need you." "I'm not staying. I don't know if I'm staying." "Sure." Martha's smile said she didn't believe that for a second. They spent the afternoon together, Martha teaching Evelyn the rhythms of the ranch kitchen, where things were stored, how to manage the wood stove's temperamental heat, which chickens laid best, and which ones were just freeloading. It was easy, comfortable in a way that made Evelyn's chest ache because she'd never had this with her own mother, who died when Evelyn was 10. Never had it with Margaret, who'd made sure Evelyn knew she was an obligation, not family. Riker returned as the sun started its descent, dusty and tired. He stopped short when he saw the bread cooling on the counter, the kitchen clean, the coffee fresh. Martha came by, Eveline said quickly. I hope that's all right. We made... It's fine. It's good. He looked like he wanted to say more, but didn't. Just washed up at the pump, poured coffee, sat at the table with a weariness that spoke of hard physical work. Martha gathered her things. I'll be back Friday. You need anything before then? Send word. After she left, the house fell quiet again. Evelyn sliced bread, buttered it, set it in front of Riker without asking if he wanted any. He ate 3 slices without speaking. Long day? She finally asked. Found a break in the north fence. Took hours to fix. Lost 2 head of cattle through it before I got there. That's bad? That's expensive. Can't afford to lose cattle to carelessness. He rubbed his face. Sorry, not your problem. I don't mind hearing about it. He looked at her surprised. What? Nothing. Just Celeste's letters never asked about the ranch, about the work. It was all about Boston, society, parties I've never been to and never will attend. I'm not Celeste. No, you're not. He said it like that was a good thing. They fell into an unexpected pattern over the next week. Riker worked from before sunrise to after sunset, managing cattle, fixing fences, dealing with the endless demands of keeping 3,000 acres running. Eveline kept to the house mostly, reading his books, helping Martha when she came by, slowly learning the shape of her days when no one was dictating them. But she noticed things. The ledgers in the office, numbers that didn't quite add up. The supplies running low. The way Riker pushed himself past exhaustion every single day. On Thursday, she found him in the office after dinner, bent over the books with a pencil and a frown that carved lines into his forehead. What's wrong? He looked up, startled. Nothing, just numbers. Can I see? You don't have to. I'm good with numbers. Let me see. He hesitated, then pushed the ledger toward her. Eveline scanned the columns, the expenses, the income, the debts. It took her 10 minutes to find the pattern. You're paying too much for feed. What? Here, she pointed. And here. The supplier in Denver is charging you almost double what you should be paying. There's a mill in Colorado Springs that would cost half as much, even with shipping. Riker stared at the numbers. How do you know that? I read the agricultural journals in your parlor. They list prices. She flipped to another page. And you're losing money on the cattle sales. You're selling at the wrong time of year. If you waited until fall when prices are higher, I can't wait until fall. I need the money now to pay debts. What if you sold half now, half in fall? The fall sales would make up the difference, and then some. He looked at her like she'd started speaking another language. You figured that out from my ledgers? It's basic accounting. It's more than I've managed in 6 months. He sat back, ran a hand through his hair. In Boston, what did you do? Really? Kept my father's books for years before Margaret forbade it. She said it wasn't appropriate for a woman. But I used to help him manage his investments, track his business expenses. I was good at it. Why did he let her stop you? Because it was easier to keep Margaret happy than to fight for me. The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. Riker was quiet for a moment. Their loss is my gain then. I'm not saying I should. Would you look at the books? Really look at them? See where else I'm hemorrhaging money? He stood, gestured to the desk. Please. I'm a rancher, not an accountant. I know cattle and horses and land, but this, he tapped the ledger, this defeats me every time. You want me to manage your finances? I want you to stop me from running this ranch into the ground through sheer ignorance. It was the first time anyone had asked her to use her mind for something other than figuring out how to stay out of the way. All right, she said quietly. I'll look at them. She stayed up past midnight that night, going through 3 years of ledgers by lamplight. The picture that emerged made her angry. Riker wasn't a bad businessman. He was being cheated by half his suppliers and didn't realize it because he trusted people to deal honestly. The frontier might value straight talk, but there were plenty of men willing to take advantage of someone too busy working to watch the numbers. The next morning, she presented him with a list over breakfast. You need to change suppliers for feed, change your selling schedule, and fire your livestock broker in Denver. He's skimming off the top. Riker's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. Jim Morrison. I've worked with him for 5 years. And he's been stealing from you for 5 years. Look at the percentages. Compare them to standard broker fees. He's taking almost double. Riker studied the numbers she'd written out, his jaw tightening. Son of a... He caught himself. Sorry, I've heard worse. I trusted him. That's what he counted on. Evelyn poured herself more coffee, surprised at how steady her hands were. A week ago, she'd been terrified of overstepping. Now she was telling a man how to run his business. The feed supplier, too, and the man who sells you tack. They see a lone rancher without a wife, without family, and they think they can charge whatever they want. But I have a wife now, or close enough. Riker looked at her with something like respect. They don't know the arrangement. Far as anyone in town knows, you're here to marry me. Does that matter? It might. If they think I've got someone watching the numbers, someone who'll notice when they try to cheat me. He stood, grabbed his hat. Come to town with me today. What? Come to town. I need to visit the general store, talk to a few people. You should meet folks anyway. And he paused. I want them to see I'm not alone anymore. It wasn't romantic. It was practical, strategic even. But something in Evelyn's chest warmed anyway. Copper Ridge looked different in full daylight with Riker beside her. People stared as they walked down the main street, whispers following in their wake. Evelyn kept her back straight, her chin up, the way she'd learned to do in Boston when walking past people who mocked her. But here, the stares felt different. Curious, maybe. Assessing. Not automatically cruel. Riker! A man emerged from the general store, balding and round with a salesman's smile. Heard you brought someone back from the station. This must be Evelyn Harrow, my fiancée. Riker's hand settled at the small of her back, proprietary but not possessive. Evelyn, this is Harold Briggs, runs the general store. Miss Harrow, welcome to Copper Ridge. Harold's eyes traveled over her, calculating. Pleasure to meet you. Mr. Briggs. Evelyn kept her voice neutral. I understand you supply the ranch with feed. For several years now, yes. At what rate per hundredweight? Harold blinked. I'd have to check my records. Because I've been reviewing the ranch accounts, and your prices seem significantly higher than market rate. Almost 40% higher, in fact. The smile froze on Harold's face. Well, there are shipping costs to consider, the remoteness of the ranch. The ranch is 5 miles from town. That doesn't justify a 40% markup. Evelyn smiled, sweet as poison. I'm sure you'll want to revise your rates to something more reasonable. Otherwise, I believe the mill in Colorado Springs would be happy for our business. Now, Miss Harrow, there's no need to be hasty. I'm not being hasty. I'm being practical. We'll expect new rates by Monday, or we'll take our business elsewhere. She turned to Riker. Shall we? They walked away, leaving Harold sputtering. Riker waited until they were out of earshot, then laughed. Actually laughed. Deep and genuine. Did you see his face? I might have been too harsh. You were perfect. He's been overcharging me for 2 years, and I never even questioned it. Riker shook his head. You just saved me more money in one conversation than I make in a month. Good. Then maybe you can afford to keep me around. The words came out lighter than she felt. Because the truth was, she was starting to like it here. Like the work, the purpose. The way Riker treated her like her brain was an asset instead of an embarrassment. They made 3 more stops in town. Each time, Evelyn asked sharp questions, noticed discrepancies, refused to be charmed or dismissed. By the time they headed back to the ranch, she'd renegotiated prices with 2 more suppliers and made mental notes about 3 others who needed watching. You enjoy that, Riker said as they rode back in the wagon. What? The negotiating, the numbers. You're good at it. My stepmother would say it's unladylike. Your stepmother can go to hell. Evelyn laughed, surprised. Riker Callahan. Language. I mean it. Any woman who'd make her own daughter feel worthless isn't worth listening to. He glanced at her. You're not worthless, Evelyn. You're probably the most valuable thing that's happened to this ranch in years. Her throat went tight. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're smart, capable, and you don't suffer fools. That's more than most people can say. He pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house. I also know you're still planning to leave. I can see it in how you never fully unpack, how you're careful not to get too comfortable. I don't know what I'm planning. That's fair. But Evelyn, if you do decide to stay for real, not just as some arrangement or favor, I'd like that. Not because I need someone to manage my books, though that's useful, but because I like having you here. I like talking to someone who sees through the bull, who tells me when I'm being an idiot, who doesn't pretend to be something they're not. He climbed down from the wagon, started to unhitch the horses. Evelyn sat frozen, his words echoing in her head. Someone valued her. Not for her ability to disappear and cause no trouble, but for her mind, her honesty, her strength. It was possibly the most terrifying and wonderful thing anyone had ever said to her. That night, she wrote 2 letters. The first to her father, brief and cold, informing him she was staying in Colorado and would not be returning to Boston. The second to Celeste, even briefer, thanking her for not coming west because it meant Evelyn could have the life her sister never would have appreciated. She sealed them both, set them on the table for posting, and felt something settle in her chest. She was staying. Not forever, maybe. Not as Riker's wife yet, certainly. But staying. The decision felt like stepping off a cliff, or maybe like finally landing after years of falling. She couldn't quite tell the difference. The letters went out on Monday, and by Wednesday, Evelyn had almost convinced herself she'd made a mistake. Not about staying, that felt right in a way few things in her life ever had, but about announcing it so definitively. What if Riker changed his mind? What if she couldn't actually handle frontier life long term? What if she was just trading one form of dependence for another? She was scrubbing potatoes at the kitchen sink, working through these thoughts, when she heard shouting from the direction of the barns. Not normal ranch shouting, the kind of yelling that meant something had gone wrong. Evelyn dropped the potato, grabbed her skirts, and ran. She found them clustered near the far corral, Riker and 3 ranch hands surrounding something on the ground. As she got closer, she saw it was a person. A boy, really, maybe 19, with his leg bent at an angle that made her stomach lurch. "Someone get the doctor," one of the hands was yelling. "Doctor's in Silver Creek today. Won't be back till tomorrow," another answered. "Then ride to Silver Creek. That's 4 hours there and 4 back. Kid could be dead by then if that leg, Evelyn pushed through the circle of men. "Move." They stared at her. "I said move." She dropped to her knees beside the injured boy who was white-faced and shaking, teeth clenched against screams. "What happened?" "Horse spooked," Riker said, his voice tight. "Threw Tommy into the fence. Landed wrong." Tommy. She'd seen him around the ranch, quiet kid with red hair and freckles. He looked at her now with eyes glazed with pain. "Miss Harrow, you shouldn't—" One of the hands started. "Shut up." Evelyn was already running her hands along the boy's leg, gentle but firm, feeling for the break. There. Tibia, clean break from what she could tell, but the bone hadn't punctured through. That was good. "Tommy, can you hear me?" "Hurts," he gasped. "I know. I'm going to help you, but it's going to hurt worse first. Do you understand?" He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "You." She pointed at the nearest hand, a grizzled man named Pete. "Get me 2 straight pieces of wood, about this long." She held her hands apart. "And all the clean cloth you can find, you—" She pointed at another. "Get whiskey. The good stuff, not the rot gut. And someone bring me hot water and soap, now." They scattered. Riker knelt beside her. "Evelyn, what are you—" "His leg's broken. We don't set it properly, he'll walk with a limp the rest of his life. If infection sets in, he could lose the leg entirely." She looked up at him. "I can do this. I've studied it. I've done it once before on a neighbor's son. But you have to trust me. The doctor won't get here in time. And by the time he does, the swelling will be so bad he won't be able to set the bone without cutting Tommy open. This is the best chance the boy has." Riker searched her face, then nodded. "What do you need me to do?" "Hold him steady when I tell you to, and don't let him move no matter how much he screams." The men returned with supplies. Evelyn worked fast, washing her hands in the hot water the way the medical texts had stressed, cleaning the area around the break. She gave Tommy whiskey, made him drink half a cup even though he sputtered and choked. "More," she said. "I don't—" "Drink it. Trust me, you'll want to be as drunk as possible for this." While the whiskey worked, she prepared the splints, tearing cloth into strips. The ranch hands watched in silence, their skepticism plain. A woman doing a doctor's work. It went against everything they knew. "All right." Evelyn positioned herself at Tommy's leg. "Riker, hold his shoulders. Pete, hold his other leg down. The rest of you, make yourselves useful or get out of my way." She took a breath, said a silent prayer to her medical textbooks, and pulled. Tommy screamed. The sound cut through the afternoon air like a blade. The bone made a sound as it shifted back into place, a grinding pop that made one of the ranch hands turn away and retch. But Evelyn held firm, feeling for the alignment, adjusting until the bone sat right. Then she was splinting it, wrapping it tight but not too tight, checking Tommy's toes for circulation, monitoring his breathing. "Someone get me more clean cloth," she said, wiping sweat from her forehead with her sleeve. "We need to keep this leg immobilized completely, and he'll need water, food, somewhere clean to rest. The bunkhouse won't do. Too much dirt, too much risk of infection." "He can have the spare room next to yours," Riker said immediately. "We'll move him careful." It took 4 of them to carry Tommy to the house, the boy drifting in and out of consciousness from the whiskey and pain. Evelyn directed them like a general commanding troops, and they obeyed without question now. Whatever doubt they'd had evaporated when that bone clicked into place. Once Tommy was settled, Evelyn sat beside his bed with a basin of cool water, monitoring his fever, changing the cloth on his forehead. Martha arrived an hour later, took one look at the situation, and started making soup. "Heard there was trouble," she said, not asking, just stating. "Tommy broke his leg. I said it." Martha glanced at her. "You know what you're doing?" "I hope so. Otherwise I just tortured that boy for nothing." "The screaming was a good sign. Means he's still got fight in him." Martha added vegetables to the pot. "How'd you learn to set bones?" "Books, mostly. Watched a doctor do it once. Did it myself once before, but that was a smaller break. This was..." Evelyn looked at her hands, still steady despite everything. "This was worse. But you did it anyway. What choice did I have? Let him suffer until tomorrow? Hope the doctor could fix it after 8 hours of swelling? Most women would have fainted or cried or run for help." "I'm not most women." Evelyn said it without thinking, then stopped. "I mean, I know what you mean." Martha's smile was approving. "And you're right. You're not." Tommy slept through the afternoon and into the evening, his breathing steady, his color slowly returning. Evelyn checked on him every hour, watching for signs of fever or infection. Around 8, Riker appeared at the door with a plate of food. "Martha says you haven't eaten." "I'm fine." "Evelyn." He set the plate on the dresser, pulled up a chair beside her. "Eat. You're no good to Tommy if you collapse." She ate because he was right, but her appetite had vanished somewhere between the screaming and the waiting. Riker sat with her in silence, the lamplight casting shadows across his tired face. "Where did you learn to do that?" he finally asked. "I told you. I wanted to study medicine. My stepmother forbade it, so I studied in secret. Bought books with money I made from sewing, read them at night when everyone was asleep." She set down her fork. "I helped deliver Mrs. Patterson's baby when I was 23. The midwife was drunk, and the doctor wouldn't come because Mrs. Patterson couldn't pay. So I went. Delivered a healthy baby boy and kept the mother from bleeding to death." "What did your family say?" "They never knew. Mrs. Patterson was our washerwoman, beneath our notice, according to Margaret. She gave me a silver thimble as thanks. I still have it." Riker was quiet for a moment. "You saved Tommy's life today." "Maybe. We won't know for certain until the swelling goes down and we see if the bone's set properly." The men were talking. They said they've never seen anything like it. Pete said his sister lost her leg to a break half as bad because the doctor botched the setting. "I might have botched it too." "But you tried. You didn't hesitate, didn't wait for someone else to handle it. You just did what needed doing." He reached over, covered her hand with his. "You're something else, Evelyn Harrow." His hand was warm, calloused, steady. She didn't pull away. "I was terrified," she admitted quietly. "The whole time. What if I made it worse? What if he loses the leg anyway? What if—" "But you did it anyway. That's what courage is. Not the absence of fear. Doing it scared." They sat like that, hands touching, watching Tommy breathe, until Martha appeared to shoo Riker out and insist Evelyn get some sleep. "I'll watch him," Martha said firmly. "You've done enough for one day." Evelyn wanted to argue, but exhaustion hit her like a physical weight. She stumbled to her room, fell into bed fully dressed, and was asleep before her head hit the pillow. She woke to sunlight and voices, men's voices coming from Tommy's room. She threw on a shawl and rushed down the hall, heart pounding. Had something gone wrong? Was he... Never seen a woman do anything like that in my life, Pete was saying. Steadier hands than Doc Jenkins, another voice added. Tommy was awake, propped up on pillows, looking pale but alive. The ranch hands clustered around his bed like visitors at a shrine. They all turned when Evelyn appeared. Miss Harrow. Pete stood, pulled off his hat. We wanted to thank you for saving the kid. I haven't saved him yet. We still need to watch for infection, monitor the healing. You saved him, Tommy said, his voice rough but firm. I felt that bone go back in place, miss. Knew right then I was going to be all right. You're going to be in bed for weeks and then on crutches for months after that. But I'll walk again. Pete's sister, she never walked right after her break. You gave me that, gave me my leg back. The gratitude in his young face made Evelyn's throat tight. I just did what anyone would. No, ma'am, Pete interrupted. You did what a doctor would do. Better than a doctor, because you were here and you didn't think twice about helping. The other men nodded. There was something in their eyes she'd never seen before. Not suspicion or dismissal or the cruel amusement she was used to. Respect. Actual respect. Well, she managed. Someone needs to change those bandages and check the splint. So if you gentlemen would give us some privacy? They filed out, each one tipping his hat or nodding as they passed. Pete paused at the door. My wife's expecting, due in about 2 months. Would you, if there's trouble, would you be willing to help? I'm not a midwife. But you know more than most, and you don't panic. That matters. Evelyn looked at this rough man, hat literally in hand, asking her for help, trusting her. Yes, she heard herself say. If you need me, I'll help. His relief was palpable. Thank you, Miss Harrow. Thank you. After he left, Tommy grinned at her. You're famous now, miss. The woman who set bones and didn't faint. I still might faint, just delayed reaction. Nah, you're tougher than that. He shifted, winced. Is it true you're going to marry Mr. Callahan? I don't know. Why? But... 'Cause if you do, you'll be good for this place. Ranch needs someone like you. Boss works himself to death, doesn't trust easy, keeps everything locked up tight. But you're different. You see things, fix things. He closed his eyes, tired already. You belong here, Miss Harrow. More than you probably think. She sat with him until he dozed off, thinking about belonging. She'd never belonged anywhere. Not in her mother's house after her mother died. Not in her father's house after he remarried. Certainly not in Boston society that had labeled her lacking from the moment she grew too tall and too plain to fit their mold. But here, in this rough frontier town, in this house that smelled of coffee and leather and wood smoke, maybe here she could belong. If she was brave enough to let herself. Over the next 2 weeks, something shifted in Copper Ridge. Word spread about what Evelyn had done, and suddenly she wasn't just the strange woman Riker had brought back from the train station. She was the woman who'd saved Tommy Grant's leg, the woman who knew medicine, the woman you went to when you needed help. A rancher's wife came by with a sick child, fever that wouldn't break. Evelyn made a poultice from herbs Martha helped her identify, showed the mother how to keep the fever down. The child recovered. A cowboy cut his hand badly on barbed wire. Evelyn cleaned it, stitched it closed with steady hands, and thread from her sewing kit, taught him how to keep it clean. No infection. An old woman in town fell and couldn't get up. Evelyn suspected a hip fracture, immobilized it, arranged for her to be transported to a doctor in Denver. The woman survived. Each time, Evelyn expected someone to question her authority, to demand a real doctor. But real doctors were scarce in Colorado territory, and the ones around were often drunk or incompetent or simply too far away to matter. What Evelyn offered was something more valuable. Immediate care from someone who actually knew what she was doing. Riker watched all of this with an expression she couldn't quite read. Pride, maybe. Concern, too. She was using his supplies, his house, his resources to help people who often couldn't pay. I can stop, she told him one evening after she'd spent 3 hours with a difficult childbirth in town. If it's too much, if it's costing you, don't stop. He said it firmly. This is good. You're helping people. The ranch can afford some bandages and medicine. Some of them pay me. Not much, but... She showed him the small collection of coins and trade goods. Mrs. Patterson gave me eggs. The Johnsons gave me a chicken.
Pete's wife made me a quilt. Then you're doing better than most doctors. He smiled, and it changed his whole face, made him look years younger. Evelyn, you're building something here, building trust. That matters more than money. I'm not a real doctor. You're real enough for the people you're helping. That's what counts.
She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe she was actually doing good instead of just playing at something beyond her capabilities. But doubt lingered, familiar and cold. The doubt evaporated the day Pete came riding up to the ranch house, his horse lathered and his face white with panic. "It's Sarah," he gasped. "The baby's coming and something's wrong. She's bleeding and the baby won't. Please, Miss Harrow, please." Evelyn was already moving. "Riker, get the wagon. Martha, pack my medical supplies. Pete, take a breath and tell me exactly what's happening." They made it to Pete's homestead in 20 minutes that felt like hours. Sarah was in bed, her face gray with pain and blood loss. Too much blood. Evelyn took one look and knew this was beyond anything she'd done before. The baby was breech. She could feel it immediately, feet first instead of head, and Sarah was losing blood from somewhere internal, somewhere Evelyn couldn't see to stop. "How long has she been laboring?" Evelyn asked, scrubbing her hands, fighting panic. "Since yesterday morning, over 24 hours. "Too long, much too long." "Sarah." Evelyn leaned over the exhausted woman. "I need you to listen to me. Your baby is turned wrong. I'm going to try to turn it, but it's going to hurt. Do you understand? Just save my baby," Sarah whispered. "Promise me. I'm going to try to save both of you, but I need you to trust me and do exactly what I say." What followed was the longest hour of Evelyn's life. She'd read about turning breech babies in her medical texts, studied the diagrams until she could see them in her sleep. But reading about it and doing it with your hands inside a woman's body while she screamed and bled were entirely different things. Riker held Sarah's shoulders. Pete held her hand, tears streaming down his face. Martha boiled water and handed Evelyn supplies and prayed silently. And Evelyn worked. Felt for the baby's position, tried to ease it around, failed, tried again. Her arms ached. Sweat poured down her face. Sarah's screams echoed off the cabin walls. "I can't," Sarah gasped. "I can't do this." "Yes, you can, Evelyn said, her voice steadier than she felt. "You're strong. Stronger than you know. One more push. Give me one more push." She felt the baby shift, felt it turn, finally, head down like it should be. Felt Sarah bear down with strength that shouldn't have been possible after so many hours of labor. And then there was crying. Not Sarah's crying, a baby's cry, thin and outraged and alive. Evelyn pulled the baby free, a tiny girl with dark hair and a fierce scowl. She cleared the infant's mouth, cut the cord with shaking hands, wrapped her in a clean cloth. "A daughter," she said, her voice breaking. "Pete, you have a daughter." But Sarah was still bleeding. Evelyn handed the baby to Martha, turned back to the mother. The placenta came out wrong, torn, pieces missing. That's where the bleeding was coming from. She worked fast, removing fragments, packing the wound with clean cloth, applying pressure, praying to anyone who might be listening that it would be enough. It took another hour before the bleeding finally slowed. Another hour of Evelyn's hands inside Sarah's body, removing tissue, stopping hemorrhage, doing things no woman without medical training should know how to do. When it was finally over, when Sarah's color started returning and the bleeding had stopped and the baby was nursing, Evelyn walked outside and vomited in Pete's yard. Riker found her there, shaking and sick. He didn't say anything, just handed her a canteen of water, stood beside her while she pulled herself together. "She could have died," Evelyn said finally. "They both could have died. If I'd been wrong, if I'd turned the baby wrong, if I hadn't found all the placental fragments, but you did. They're alive because of you. I'm not qualified for this. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a woman who read some books and got lucky. Luck doesn't set bones or turn breech babies." He turned her to face him, hands gentle on her shoulders. "Evelyn, you saved 3 lives this month. 3. How many doctors can say that? A real doctor would have known what to do immediately, wouldn't have been scared, wouldn't have... Every doctor is scared sometimes. The good ones are scared, and do it anyway." He wiped a smudge of blood from her cheek. "You're a good doctor, Evelyn. Maybe the best this territory has seen in years." She wanted to argue, but she was too tired. She leaned against him instead, let him hold her up while the adrenaline drained away and left her hollow. Inside, Pete held his daughter and his wife's hand, both of them alive, both of them whole. Because Evelyn had known what to do. Had done it scared, done it uncertain, but had done it. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Martha dozed in the back of the wagon. Riker drove, shooting occasional glances at Evelyn like he was checking to make sure she was still there. "You know what this means," he said eventually. "What?" "You're the closest thing to a doctor for 50 miles. People are going to need you, constantly. Birth, breaks, sickness, everything." "I know." "You sure you want that? It's not easy work. It's not safe work. And it won't make you rich." Evelyn thought about Sarah's face when she held her baby for the first time. About Tommy walking again. About all the people who'd thanked her with eggs and chickens and handmade quilts because it was all they had to give. "I want it," she said. "I want to help." "Then we'll make it work. Set up a proper space for you to work, get you real medical supplies, whatever you need." "Riker." "What?" "Why are you doing this? Supporting me in this? Most men would say it's inappropriate, unseemly, not a woman's place." He was quiet for a long moment. "Because watching you work is like watching someone finally do what they were meant to do. And I'm not about to be the man who stands in the way of that." Something warm and terrifying bloomed in Evelyn's chest. This man she barely knew, this stranger who'd become less strange with each passing day, was giving her something no one ever had, permission to be exactly who she was. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me. Just keep saving lives and making me look good by association." She laughed, surprising herself. Laughed until she cried, until all the fear and adrenaline and overwhelming emotion of the day poured out. And Riker let her, didn't try to stop her or tell her to calm down. Just drove the wagon and let her fall apart and put herself back together. By the time they reached the ranch, night had fallen complete. Stars blazed overhead in numbers Evelyn had never seen in Boston's sky. She stood in the yard for a moment, looking up, feeling impossibly small and impossibly significant all at once. She'd saved 3 lives this month, had found a purpose, had maybe, possibly, found a home. And the woman Boston had called worthless was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd been wrong about her all along. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Sarah Grant brought her baby girl home, healthy and whole. Evelyn was in the kitchen making coffee when Riker walked in from collecting the mail in town, his face tight in a way that made her stomach drop. "What's wrong?" He handed her an envelope. Expensive paper, Boston postmark, her father's law firm embossed in the corner. She didn't need to open it to know it was bad news. "You want me to stay while you read it?" Riker asked. "No, yes, I don't know." She set down the coffee pot, her hands suddenly unsteady. "Maybe you should read it. I don't think I can." He took the letter back, broke the seal, scanned the contents. His expression went from concerned to furious in the space of 3 sentences. "Those absolute bastards." "What does it say?" "They're threatening to sue me for fraud, claiming I misrepresented myself in correspondence, that I lured Celeste under false pretenses with intent to—" He stopped, jaw clenched. "They're making it sound like I kidnapped you." Evelyn's legs went weak. She sat down hard in the nearest chair. "They can't do that. I came willingly. They're the ones who sent me. They're saying you were coerced, that you wrote to them saying you wanted to come home, but I'm keeping you here against your will." He looked at her. "Did you write that?" "No, I wrote them once, weeks ago, saying I was staying, that's all. They're also threatening to go to newspapers, make this a scandal. Rich Boston family, innocent daughter, trapped by frontier con man." Riker crumpled the letter in his fist. "They want to destroy me before anyone can question their version of events." "Why would they do this? They sent me here as a joke. They wanted me gone." "Because their joke backfired." Martha's voice came from the doorway. Neither of them had heard her come in. "Word travels, even from Colorado to Boston. People talk, and I'm betting someone back east heard about the woman out here saving lives, helping people. About how you're not the humiliated reject they sent away. You're thriving." Evelyn stared at her. "They're doing this because I'm not miserable?" "They're doing this because you made them look bad by succeeding. They wanted you to fail, come crawling back, prove you were as worthless as they always said." Martha set her basket on the table. "Instead, You proved them wrong. That's unforgivable to people like that. Riker paced the kitchen like a caged animal. They mention investigations, legal proceedings, say they've contacted authorities about potential mail fraud and misrepresentation. This could ruin everything I've built here.
Then we fight back, Evelyn said quietly. Both of them looked at her. We tell the truth. All of it. What they did, why they did it, how they used me as entertainment. She stood, feeling something cold and hard settle in her chest. They want a scandal? I'll give them one they'll never forget. Evelyn, Riker started. No, I'm done being quiet. Done letting them control the narrative. She grabbed paper and pen from the desk. I'm going to write down everything, every cruel thing Margaret said, every time Celeste mocked me, every year of being treated like a servant in my own mother's house, and then I'm going to send it to every newspaper in Boston and Denver and everywhere in between. They'll call you a liar.
Let them try. I have witnesses. Mrs. Patterson, who they treated like dirt. The servants they dismissed without references because Margaret was in a bad mood. My father's business partners who saw how they treated me. Her hand was already moving across the paper. I'll expose them for exactly what they are. Cruel, petty people who sent their own daughter away as a punchline. Martha nodded approvingly. Now you're thinking like a frontier woman. They'll fight dirty, Riker warned. So will I. I learned from the best, after all. 16 years of watching Margaret manipulate and scheme taught me plenty. Evelyn kept writing, years of suppressed anger flowing through her pen. The difference is, I have the truth on my side. She worked through this morning, filling page after page with documented cruelty. Dates, witnesses, specific incidents. The time Margaret had locked her in the cellar for speaking out of turn. The dinner party where Celeste had deliberately spilled wine on Evelyn's only good dress, then laughed while their guests mocked her. The year her father had forgotten her birthday entirely because Margaret said it wasn't important. When she finally set down the pen, she had 20 pages of meticulous, devastating truth. I need to add something, Riker said, reading over her shoulder. About the ranch, about what you've done here, so people know you're not some helpless victim. Will that help? It'll show them they picked the wrong woman to mess with. They spent the afternoon crafting additional letters. One to the Denver newspaper detailing Evelyn's medical work. One to the territorial governor's office, explaining the situation and requesting official documentation of her residency and contributions. One to her father's business associates, men who'd known her mother, appealing to whatever decency they might still possess. This is going to explode, Martha said, reading the drafts. You know that, right? Boston society is going to tear itself apart over this. Good, Evelyn said flatly. They might come after you harder, hire investigators, dig up dirt, try to discredit you however they can. Let them. What are they going to find? That I studied medicine without permission? That I worked for free helping people? That I'm living unmarried with a man who's treated me with more respect in 3 months than my family did in 28 years? She looked at Riker. Unless that last part bothers you. The only thing that bothers me is that it took this long for you to fight back. He collected the letters, prepared them for posting. I'll take these to town now. Get them sent before you change your mind. I won't change my mind. After he left, Evelyn sat at the kitchen table feeling strangely calm. She'd just declared war on her own family, burned bridges that were already crumbling, guaranteed that Boston society would be talking about her for months, and she didn't care. You're smiling, Martha observed. Am I? Like a woman who just lifted a weight off her shoulders. I spent my whole life being afraid of them. Afraid of what they'd say, what they'd do, how they'd punish me. And now I've done the worst thing I could possibly do. Told the truth about them, and I feel, she searched for the word, free. Freedom looks good on you. The responses started arriving within 2 weeks. First came a telegram from her father, brief and cold. What you've done is unforgivable. You are no longer my daughter. Evelyn read it twice, waiting to feel something. Pain, regret, loss. But all she felt was relief. Good, she said aloud, and used the telegram to light the stove. Next came letters from Boston newspapers, requesting interviews and additional details. Word had spread fast. A society daughter exposing her family's cruelty made for excellent scandal. The story had everything: wealthy families, a frontier romance, medical heroics, and betrayal. But the response that mattered most came from Denver. The territorial newspaper had printed her story in full, complete with testimonials from people she'd helped in Colorado. Tommy Grant describing how she'd set his leg. Sarah Grant thanking her for saving her life and her daughter's. Pete and Martha and half a dozen others attesting to her character and her work. The headline read, "Boston's Loss, Colorado's Gain, the remarkable Eveline Harrow." Riker brought a copy back from town, along with news that half the territory was talking about it. "You're famous," he said, spreading the paper on the table. "I'm notorious. There's a difference. The good kind of notorious. People here are proud of you. Proud that you stood up to those Eastern snobs and showed them what real strength looks like." Eveline read the article, seeing her own words printed in black and white for everyone to read. Her throat went tight. "This is really happening. This is really happening." He sat beside her. "How do you feel?" "Terrified, relieved, angry, triumphant, all of it at once." She looked at him. "Your name is in here too. They're going to come after you now, you know. Call you a fortune hunter, a con man, whatever they can think of. Let them. I've been called worse." He took her hand, the gesture becoming familiar now. "Besides, they can't hurt me. I don't care what Boston thinks. Never have. But they could damage your reputation here, make it harder to do business." "Eveline, look at me." He waited until she met his eyes. "You saved 3 lives this month. You've helped more people in 3 months than most do in a lifetime. You've taken my failing ranch and turned it profitable. If anyone in this territory believes Boston gossip over what they've seen with their own eyes, they're idiots, and I don't want their business anyway." She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe this wouldn't all come crashing down. The crash came 3 days later, but not from the direction she expected. She was in town buying medical supplies when she heard the commotion outside the general store. Raised voices, a crowd gathering. She pushed through to find a stranger on the main street. Eastern clothes, expensive boots, holding up a newspaper like a weapon. "Outrageous lies and slander," he was shouting. "The Harrow family has been pillars of Boston society for generations, and this woman, this ungrateful, delusional woman, has fabricated these stories to cover her own shameful behavior." Eveline's stomach dropped. She recognized him from her father's business dinners. Robert Winters, one of Margaret's cousins. They'd sent him as their champion. "She wasn't kidnapped. She was rescued from a life of degradation," Winters continued, addressing the growing crowd. "Living in sin with a man who lured her here under false pretenses, practicing medicine without license or training, putting innocent lives at risk with her dangerous incompetence." "That's a lie," Martha's voice rang out. The crowd parted for her. "I've watched this woman save lives your fancy Boston doctors wouldn't have bothered with. She set Tommy Grant's leg when your kind of doctor would have taken it off." An isolated incident that proves nothing except reckless endangerment. Reckless endangerment? Tommy himself pushed forward, still on crutches, but walking. "I can walk because of her. My sister lost her leg to a real doctor who butchered the setting. Miss Harrow knew what she was doing." "And what about the baby she delivered?" Sarah Grant appeared, infant in her arms. "Your doctors would have let us both die because we couldn't afford their fees. She saved us, both of us." Winter's face reddened. "These people have been manipulated, deceived by a woman who told the truth about her family," Eveline said, stepping forward. The crowd went silent. "Hello, Mr. Winters? I'm surprised Margaret sent you all this way. Though I suppose she couldn't come herself, too afraid of having to face the people she's spent years tearing down." "You will address Mrs. Harrow with respect." "I'll address her however I please. She's not here to control me anymore." Eveline moved closer, aware of the entire town watching. "Tell me, Mr. Winters, did Margaret mention that she's the one who sent me here? That it was her idea, her joke? Or did she conveniently forget that part when she painted herself as the concerned parent?" "She sent you here because this man," he pointed at Riker, who'd appeared at Eveline's side, "requested a wife through fraudulent correspondence. He requested Celeste. Margaret sent me instead because she thought it would be funny. She wanted me to be rejected, humiliated, sent crawling back so she could tell all of Boston about it at her tea parties." Eveline's voice carried across the silent street. "But I didn't come crawling back. I stayed. I built a life here. And that's what she can't stand. That the daughter she called worthless turned out to be worth more than she ever imagined." You're delusional.
Am I? Then why are you here? Why did she send you 1,500 miles to discredit me if I'm so worthless? Why does she care what I do in Colorado if I'm the embarrassment she always claimed I was? Winter's mouth worked, but no sound came out. I'll tell you why, Evelyn continued. Because every life I save, every person I help, every day I thrive out here proves she was wrong about me. And Margaret Harrow cannot stand being wrong.
The legal proceedings will continue regardless of your theatrics. Let them. I have documentation of everything. Witnesses. Proof. She crossed her arms. What do you have? Margaret's version of events and whatever lies she's convinced you to tell. Good luck with that. The crowd murmured approval. Winters looked around, realized he'd lost them, tried one more time. This town should be ashamed, harboring a woman of such questionable morals. Get out! Pete's voice cut through the street. We don't want you here. You can't order me. I said get out. Pete wasn't alone anymore. A dozen men had moved forward, ranch hands and shopkeepers and miners, forming a wall. Miss Harrow is one of ours. You want to insult her? You insult all of us. This is absurd. You've got until sundown to leave town, the sheriff said, stepping forward. After that, I'll find a reason to arrest you. Disturbing the peace, public slander, something creative. Your choice. Winters sputtered, threatened, tried to regain control, but the crowd had turned against him. These were frontier people who valued action over words, who'd seen what Evelyn could do with their own eyes. No amount of Eastern rhetoric was going to change their minds. He left on the afternoon train, still blustering about lawsuits and consequences. The moment he was gone, the crowd erupted in cheers. People swarmed Evelyn, thanking her, supporting her, treating her like she'd won some kind of war. Maybe she had. Riker stayed close, a steady presence at her back, until they finally made it to the wagon. The ride home was quiet, both of them processing what had just happened. You were magnificent, he said finally. I was angry. Same thing, in your case. He glanced at her. You know they're not going to stop. Winters will report back they'll try something else. I know, but I'm not backing down. Good, neither am I. He pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house, turned to face her. Evelyn, there's something I need to say. Something I should have said weeks ago. Her heart started pounding. What? When you first got here, I thought I was being charitable, giving a woman in a bad situation a safe place to land, but that's not what happened. He took her hand. You saved this ranch. You saved me. In a lot of ways, I didn't even know I needed saving. You're smart and strong, and you don't take anyone's nonsense. And somewhere along the way, I fell completely in love with you. The world tilted. Riker Shiike, I know the timing is terrible. I know we're in the middle of this mess with your family, but I needed you to know. You don't have to stay here because you have nowhere else to go. You don't have to marry me because it's convenient or expected. You have choices now, real choices. He squeezed her hand. But if one of those choices could be staying because you want to, because you maybe feel the same way I do, that would be everything. Evelyn looked at this man who'd given her space to breathe, room to grow, permission to be exactly who she was, who'd supported her medical work without question, defended her against her family's attacks, stood beside her while the whole territory watched. I'm not easy to love, she said quietly. I'm stubborn and opinionated, and I have more baggage than a train station. I know. I don't care. I'll probably always be fighting with my family in some way. This scandal isn't going to disappear. I know, still don't care. And I'm going to keep practicing medicine, keep helping people, even when it's dangerous or difficult, or takes me away from the ranch. I'm counting on it. His thumb traced circles on her hand. Anything else I should know? I love you too, she whispered. I didn't want to. I tried not to, but I do. He kissed her then, right there in the wagon in front of the house, and it felt like coming home. Not the home she'd grown up in, where she was never good enough, but a real home, built on respect and partnership and the kind of love that didn't require her to be anyone but herself. When they finally pulled apart, he was grinning. So you'll marry me? For real this time, not as some arrangement? Yes, but we're doing it soon before my family can try to stop it. How soon? This weekend. Small ceremony, just us and the people who matter. Your family is going to lose their minds. Probably, but they'll lose them in Boston, and I'll be here, married to you, living the life they said I'd never have. She smiled. Sounds perfect to me. They were married that Sunday in Martha's parlor, with Pete and Sarah and Tommy as witnesses. No fancy dress, no elaborate ceremony. Just vows spoken honestly, rings exchanged, and a kiss that sealed promises they both intended to keep. The news reached Boston 10 days later. Evelyn's father sent one final telegram. You have made your choice. Do not contact this family again. She read it, showed it to Riker, and laughed. Should I feel bad that I don't feel bad? You should feel free, he said, which is exactly what you look like. That night, lying in bed beside her husband, still a strange and wonderful thought, Evelyn thought about the woman who'd stepped off that train 3 months ago. Tired, scared, convinced she was heading toward another humiliation. That woman would never have stood up to someone like Robert Winters, would never have declared her love out loud, would never have believed she deserved any of this, the respect, the purpose, the partnership. But that woman didn't exist anymore. She'd been replaced by someone stronger, someone who'd learned that worth wasn't determined by family or society or anyone else's opinion. Worth was what you did, who you helped, how you showed up when things got hard. And Evelyn Callahan, she tried the name out in her mind, liked the sound of it, had shown up, was still showing up, would keep showing up for every person who needed her, every challenge that faced her, every day of the life she'd chosen. Boston had thrown her away thinking she was garbage. Colorado had proven she was gold. And the woman they'd called worthless had become invaluable. The scandal reached its peak in late October, 6 months after Evelyn had first arrived in Colorado. The newspapers had been feasting on the story for weeks. Boston society divided between those who defended the Harrow family and those who quietly admitted they'd always found Margaret insufferable. Evelyn's expose had opened floodgates, and suddenly other people were coming forward with their own stories of the Harrow family's cruelty. A former servant described being dismissed without references after Margaret accused her of theft that never happened. A business partner of her father's admitted he'd witnessed the mistreatment but said nothing because it wasn't his place to interfere. Mrs. Patterson, the washerwoman whose baby Evelyn had delivered, wrote a letter to the Boston Herald detailing years of condescension and abuse from a family that considered themselves her betters. The portrait that emerged wasn't pretty, and Margaret Harrow, who'd spent decades cultivating an image of refinement and grace, was watching it crumble to dust. Evelyn learned all this from newspapers that arrived weeks late, reading about her own life like it belonged to a stranger. She was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when Riker brought the latest batch from town, his expression unreadable. "You need to see this one," he said, handing her a copy of the Denver Post. The headline made her stop breathing. Harrow family finances in shambles. Daughter's allegations spark investigation. She scanned the article quickly. Her father's business partners, apparently spooked by the scandal, had started asking questions about their investments. Auditors had been brought in, and what they found was damning. Years of mismanagement, questionable dealings, money moved between accounts in ways that didn't quite add up. "They're saying your father might face criminal charges," Riker said quietly. "Fraud, embezzlement. Margaret's spending habits buried them in debt they've been hiding for years." Evelyn sat down on the porch steps, the newspaper trembling in her hands. "I didn't want this." "Didn't you?" She looked up at him, startled. "What?" "You exposed them. You had to know it wouldn't stop with just embarrassment." He sat beside her, not touching, giving her space. "I'm not saying you did anything wrong. They earned every bit of this. But don't pretend you didn't know it would have consequences." He was right. Some part of her had known, had wanted them to hurt the way they'd hurt her for years. And now they were hurting, publicly, devastatingly, completely. "Does that make me a bad person?" she asked. "No, it makes you human." He took her hand. "You're allowed to feel complicated about this. You can be glad they're getting what they deserve and still feel guilty about it. Both things can be true." That night, Evelyn lay awake thinking about her father. Not the weak man who'd let Margaret control everything, but the father from before, the one who'd taught her numbers when she was 6, who'd smiled when she'd solved complex equations, who'd promised she could be anything she wanted. That man had died somewhere along the way,
replaced by someone who chose an easier life over his own daughter. She mourned him, even as she refused to forgive him. The next letter arrived in early November. Not from Boston this time, but from Celeste. Evelyn almost threw it away unread, but curiosity won. The handwriting was messier than usual, the words rushed and desperate. Evelyn, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I'm begging. Father is facing prison. Mother's reputation is destroyed. My engagement to Thomas fell apart. He said he couldn't be associated with our family anymore. We've lost everything. The house is being sold to pay debts. We have nowhere to go. Please, if you have any charity in your heart, any family feeling left, help us. Send money. Speak to your husband. He's wealthy. You owe us that much after what you've done. Your sister, Celeste. Evelyn read it 3 times, feeling nothing but a cold, hollow fury. The nerve, Martha said when Evelyn showed it to her later. After everything they did, she thinks you owe them? She always thought I owed them. For the privilege of existing in their presence, apparently. Evelyn folded the letter carefully. She doesn't even apologize, doesn't acknowledge what they did wrong. Just assumes I'll come running with money to save them. What are you going to do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. She fed the letter into the stove, watched it burn. They made their choices. I made mine. They don't get to benefit from the life they tried to destroy. But the letters kept coming. Celeste wrote twice more, each one more frantic than the last. Her father wrote once, a stiff, formal thing that came as close to an apology as his pride would allow, but still asked for financial assistance. Even distant relatives started reaching out. People who'd never given Evelyn the time of day before, suddenly remembering they were family. Evelyn burned every letter, sent not a single reply. Does it bother you? Riker asked one evening as she tossed another unopened envelope into the fire. That they're struggling? Sometimes. Late at night when I can't sleep, I think about Celeste and wonder if she's scared, if she's hungry, if she finally understands what it feels like to be powerless. Evelyn watched the paper curl and blacken. And then I remember every time she laughed when Margaret locked me in the cellar, every dinner party where she made jokes about my appearance while guests snickered, every single moment she had the chance to be kind and chose cruelty instead. And I stopped wondering. They're adults. They made their choices. Now they get to live with them, same as I've had to live with mine. But one letter got through, literally got through, handed directly to Evelyn by a rider who arrived at the ranch in mid-November. Not from family this time, from Mrs. Patterson, the washerwoman. Dear Miss Evelyn, it began in careful, labored handwriting. I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted you to know that your testimony helped more than just yourself. After I wrote my letter to the papers, other servants came forward. We're organizing, trying to make sure what happened to us doesn't happen to others. You gave us courage to speak up. I also wanted you to know your stepmother is leaving Boston. She's moving to her sister's house in Philadelphia. Your sister is going with her. Your father sold the house last week. I thought you should know. The washerwoman who remembers, Mrs. Patterson. Eveline read the letter 3 times, her throat tight. She hadn't just exposed her family. She'd started something bigger, given other people permission to tell their own stories of mistreatment. Good, she said aloud, surprising herself. Good. December brought the first real snow, transforming the ranch into something from a painting. Evelyn stood on the porch, watching it fall, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders, thinking about how much had changed in 8 months. She'd gone from unwanted daughter to respected healer, from family embarrassment to beloved wife, from worthless to invaluable. The transformation hadn't been smooth or easy or anything like the stories she'd read in novels. It had been messy and painful and full of moments where she'd wanted to quit, wanted to run, wanted to go back to being small and invisible because at least that was familiar. But she hadn't. She'd stayed, fought, built something real. You're going to freeze out here, Riker said, appearing with a second shawl. He wrapped it around her, pulled her back against his chest. What are you thinking about? Everything. Nothing. How strange life is. That's specific. She laughed. I'm thinking about how my family sent me here expecting me to fail. And how I almost did fail, dozens of times. How I still feel like I'm making it up as I go,
hoping nobody notices I don't actually know what I'm doing. You saved 7 lives this year, 7 that we know of. I also lost 2. Mrs. Henderson's baby, that miner who came in too late with blood poisoning. You can't save everyone? I know. But I still remember them, still wonder if I could have done something different. He turned her to face him. That's what makes you a good doctor, Evelyn. The ones who stop caring about the ones they lose. They're the dangerous ones. You care. You try. You don't give up even when it's hard. That's worth more than formal training any day. She wanted to believe him. Most days she did. But doubt was a stubborn companion, always lurking just out of sight. Christmas came quiet and simple. No parties, no elaborate celebrations, just dinner with Martha and Pete's family, Tommy now walking with barely a limp, Sarah's baby fat and healthy and loud. They exchanged small gifts. Evelyn gave Martha a new shawl she'd knitted, received a beautiful quilt in return. Riker gave her a real medical bag, leather and professional, with her initials embossed on the side. So you stopped carrying supplies in that old flour sack, he said. She cried. Couldn't help it. The bag meant he saw this as permanent, saw her as a real doctor, believed in what she was doing enough to invest in proper equipment. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for staying, for choosing this, for choosing me. That night, wrapped in quilts against the winter cold, Evelyn thought about choice. Her family had never given her real choices, only the illusion of choice followed by punishment for choosing wrong. But here, every day was a choice, to stay or go, to help or turn away, to love or protect her heart. She chose to stay, chose to help, chose to love. And that made all the difference. The new year brought a letter that changed everything, not from Boston, but from the territorial governor's office. Inside was an official document, stamped and sealed, recognizing Evelyn Callahan as a certified medical practitioner for Colorado Territory. Not a full doctor, the law still didn't allow that, but official acknowledgement of her work and permission to continue practicing medicine. How did this happen? She asked Riker, stunned. I might have had something to do with it. Martha and I gathered testimonials from everyone you've helped. Sent them to the governor with a petition. Figured if you're going to keep saving lives, you should at least get official permission to do it. She stared at the document, at her name in formal script, at the seal that made it real and legal and recognized. I'm official. You were always official. Now you just have paperwork to prove it. Word spread fast. Within a week, people were coming from farther away, ranches 50 miles out, mining camps in the mountains, families who'd heard about the woman doctor in Copper Ridge and traveled days to see her. Evelyn set up proper office hours, organized her supplies, started keeping detailed medical records. She also started teaching. Young women would appear asking if they could watch, could learn, could maybe do what she did someday. Evelyn taught them everything she knew, how to set bones, deliver babies, treat infections, recognize symptoms of serious illness. Some would practice for a few weeks and give up. Others stayed, hungry for knowledge and purpose. You're building something, Martha observed one day, watching Evelyn teach 3 young women how to properly clean and suture a wound. A legacy. I'm just teaching what I know. You're teaching women they can be more than wives and mothers, that they can save lives and have careers and be valued for their minds. That's revolutionary. Evelyn had never thought of it that way. She was just doing what made sense, passing on knowledge, helping where she could. But Martha was right. In a territory where women's options were limited, she was showing them different possibilities. One of her students, a quiet girl named Anna, proved particularly gifted. She had steady hands, a calm demeanor, and an ability to assess situations quickly. Evelyn started taking her on calls, teaching her through practice. You're better at this than I was at your age, Evelyn told her after Anna successfully set a broken arm on her own. You really think so? I know so. You've got the instinct for it, the care. Anna's eyes shone. My father says it's not proper work for a lady, says I should focus on finding a husband. You can do both, or neither, or just one. Evelyn cleaned the medical tools, choosing her words carefully. The point is, it's your choice, not your father's, not society's, yours. Don't let anyone take that from you. Spring arrived slowly, the snow melting to reveal the ranch transformed. Riker had expanded the cattle operation using the money Evelyn's financial management had saved. They'd hired 2 more hands, fixed the fences, invested in better breeding stock. The ranch that had been barely surviving was now thriving. "We should celebrate," Riker said one evening in April, almost a year since Evelyn had first arrived. "Throw a party. Invite the whole territory." "A party? You hate parties." "I hate Boston parties. But a Colorado party? Good food, decent people, maybe some dancing? That sounds all right." They held it on a Saturday in late April. Families came from all over, people Evelyn had helped, people who'd heard about her, people who just wanted to be part of the community. Tables were set up outside, food shared potluck style, fiddle music echoing across the valley. Evelyn found herself surrounded by people thanking her, hugging her, treating her like she'd done something extraordinary instead of just what needed doing. Tommy was there, fully healed, dancing with a pretty girl from town. Sarah brought her baby, now crawling and getting into everything. Pete gave a speech thanking Evelyn for saving his family. "Speech!" someone called out. "Mrs. Callahan, give us a speech!" Evelyn's stomach dropped. Public speaking had always terrified her. Too many memories of saying the wrong thing and facing Margaret's wrath. But Riker squeezed her hand encouragingly, and she found herself standing on the porch steps, looking out at dozens of faces watching her with warmth and respect.
"I don't know what to say," she started honestly. "A year ago, I got off a train in Copper Ridge expecting humiliation and rejection. My family sent me here as a joke. They were certain I'd fail, certain I'd come running back to prove what they'd always said about me, that I was worthless." The crowd was silent, listening. "But this place, these people, you didn't care about my family's opinion. You cared about what I could do. You gave me chances I'd never had. You trusted me with your health, your families, your lives. And you taught me something my family never could, that worth isn't given to you by others. It's something you build yourself, through action and choice, and showing up when things get hard." She looked at Riker, standing beside her with pride written all over his face. "I came here broken. You helped me heal. I came here worthless. You showed me my value. I came here alone. You gave me family." Her voice cracked. "Thank you for everything, for giving me a home." The applause was deafening. People rushed forward to hug her, congratulate her, welcome her over and over again, and Evelyn, who'd spent 28 years being told she didn't belong anywhere, finally understood what it meant to be exactly where she was supposed to be. Later, after the party wound down and the last guest departed, Evelyn and Riker sat on the porch, watching the sunset over the mountains. The air was cool and sweet with spring flowers. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. "You all right?" Riker asked. "Better than all right. Happy. Actually happy." She leaned against him. "Is this real? Did my life actually turn out this way?" "It's real. You made it real." A letter had arrived that morning, the last letter, as it turned out, from Celeste, shorter than the others. No demands this time, no begging, just 3 sentences. "I saw what you've built out there. I saw the newspaper articles, the recognition. I was wrong about you. We all were." No apology, no request for forgiveness, just acknowledgement. Evelyn had burned it like the others, but this one sat differently. Less bitter, somehow. Maybe because it didn't matter anymore what Celeste thought, what any of them thought. "I got another letter from your sister," she told Riker now. "And?" "And nothing. She admitted she was wrong, but it doesn't change anything. They had years to see me clearly, years to choose differently. I'm not wasting energy forgiving them or hating them. I'm just moving forward." That sounds healthy. It sounds exhausting, but it's honest. She looked up at the darkening sky, stars beginning to appear. "You know what the strangest part is? I don't think about them much anymore. They were my whole world for so long, and now they're just people I used to know. The story gets told about them at parties. Did you hear about that awful Boston family? But I don't feel connected to it anymore. Because you're not. You're Evelyn Callahan now, Colorado Territory's most stubborn doctor." She laughed. "Stubborn? Absolutely stubborn. You argued with me for 20 minutes last week about the best way to treat saddle sores." "Because you were wrong." "I know. That's what makes you good at your job. You don't back down when you know you're right." He pulled her closer. "Even when it's inconvenient or difficult or people tell you to stop. Like my family did. Like your family did. And look where their stubbornness got them versus where yours got you."
It was true. Margaret's stubbornness had been about maintaining control, protecting image, crushing anything that threatened her position. Evelyn's stubbornness was about survival, about refusing to accept other people's definitions of her worth. One destroyed, the other built. The difference mattered. Summer brought news that Margaret and Celeste had moved to Philadelphia and disappeared from society entirely. Evelyn's father had avoided prison but lost everything: his business, his reputation, his standing. The last report said he was working as a clerk in a law office, a humiliating fall for a man who'd once hosted senators and governors. Evelyn felt something when she heard. Not satisfaction, not quite. Not sadness either. Just a sort of hollow acknowledgement that consequences were real and unavoidable. "You could write to him," Martha suggested carefully. "Your father, if you wanted closure." "What would I say? Sorry your life fell apart, but you earned it? I forgive you, but I don't really?" Evelyn shook her head. "I spent my whole life trying to get him to see me, to choose me over Margaret, to be the father I needed. He never did. Writing him now won't change that." "Fair enough. Just wanted you to know the option exists." "I know. And I'm choosing not to take it. I'm choosing to focus on the life I have instead of the family I've lost." Anna, her best student, assisted with a complicated birth that month. Twins, one breech, mother exhausted and hemorrhaging. Together, they saved all 3 lives. Afterward, Anna sat on the porch steps and cried from relief and triumph and pure, overwhelming emotion. "I did that," she kept saying. "I helped save them." "You did," Evelyn confirmed, sitting beside her. "You were brilliant. My father's going to be so angry. He specifically told me to stop this foolishness." "What are you going to do?" Anna wiped her eyes, squared her shoulders. "Keep going. I'm good at this. Better than I'd be at anything else. If he can't accept that, well..." She looked at Evelyn. "You managed without your family's approval. I can too." Evelyn smiled. "Yes, you can, but it's not easy." "Doesn't have to be easy to be right." Watching Anna walk away, head high despite her fear, Evelyn felt something shift. She wasn't just healing herself anymore. She was showing other women they could heal too, could choose differently, could be brave even when it cost them. That mattered more than any revenge against her family ever could. By the time fall rolled around again, a full year since the scandal broke, Evelyn barely thought about Boston at all. She was too busy running what had become an unofficial hospital, patients staying in the spare rooms, students rotating through to learn, Martha helping manage the chaos. The ranch house had transformed from a lonely bachelor's dwelling to a center of healing and learning. "We need more space," Riker said one evening, surveying the packed kitchen. "Maybe build an addition, dedicated medical space." "That costs money." "We have money. Thanks to you, remember? Your accounting saved this ranch. Least I can do is invest some back in your work." They designed it together. A separate building attached to the house with examination rooms, a small surgery, space for recovering patients, and a classroom for teaching. It took 3 months to build, the whole community pitching in. The day it opened, Evelyn stood in the doorway of her own medical practice and couldn't quite believe it was real. A brass plaque beside the door read, "E. Callahan, Medical Practitioner." "What do you think?" Riker asked. "I think the girl who got off that train 18 months ago wouldn't believe this is her life now." Good thing she grew into a woman who earned it then. That night, lying in bed in the house that had become home, Evelyn thought about the journey. From worthless to valued. From powerless to powerful. From victim to victor. But those words felt too simple, too clean. The truth was messier. She still had days where doubt crept in, where old insecurities whispered that she was playing pretend at being a doctor. Still had moments where she wondered if her family had been right about her all along. The difference was, those voices didn't control her anymore. She could acknowledge them and keep moving forward anyway. "You're thinking too loud," Riker mumbled sleepily beside her. "Sorry." "What about?" "About how I used to think happiness was something you earned by being good enough, pretty enough, perfect enough. And how I'm learning it's actually about being brave enough to choose it even when you're scared." He pulled her closer. "That sounds wise. Or exhausted. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. Both can be true." That became her philosophy. Both things could be true. She could miss the father she'd once had and be glad she left. could feel guilty about her family's downfall and believe they deserved consequences, could be terrified of failing as a doctor and keep practicing anyway. Life wasn't clean narratives or perfect transformations. It was complicated and contradictory and required constant choice. She chose to keep going. Every single day, she chose to keep going. And somehow, that was enough. 2 years after her arrival, a letter came that made Evelyn stop in her tracks. From Mrs. Patterson, again, writing with news that Margaret had died. Pneumonia, quick and merciless. Celeste was reportedly devastated. Her father had attended the funeral but left immediately after. "I thought you should know," the letter concluded. "Even though she treated you poorly, she was still family, whatever that means." Evelyn sat with the letter for a long time, waiting to feel something. Grief, relief, vindication, anything. But all she felt was a distant sort of sadness for the waste of it all. Margaret had spent her life building walls, maintaining control, crushing anyone who threatened her carefully constructed image. And she died alone in a city where no one really knew her, mourned by a daughter who'd learned all her worst lessons. What a sad, small way to live. "Martha died," Evelyn told Riker that evening. "I'm sorry, are you all right?" "I don't know. I should feel something more, shouldn't I? She made my life miserable for 16 years, but mostly I just feel tired. Tired of thinking about her. Tired of giving her any space in my head at all." "Then stop. You don't owe her your grief or your anger or your attention. You're allowed to just let it go." So she did. She let Margaret go, let the years of cruelty fade into something distant and less sharp. Not forgiveness, she'd never quite managed that, but something close to indifference. Margaret had lost, not because Evelyn had destroyed her, but because Evelyn had moved on and built a life Margaret could never touch. That was victory enough. The third spring brought Evelyn's own pregnancy, discovered when she treated a patient for the same symptoms she'd been experiencing. The realization hit her like lightning. She was going to be a mother. "You're sure?" Riker asked, his face cycling through shock and joy and terror. "Completely sure. I'm a doctor, remember? I know the signs." He pulled her into his arms, held her like she might break. "A baby. Our baby. Are you happy?" "I'm terrified, but yes. Happy." Evelyn understood the terror. She'd spent years watching Margaret be a mother, watching her use children as weapons, as status symbols, as pawns in her social games. The thought of becoming what Margaret had been made her stomach turn. "I won't be her," she said aloud. "What?" "Margaret. I won't be like her. I won't make our child feel worthless or unwanted. I won't—" "Evelyn," Riker cupped her face. "You're nothing like her. You're incapable of being like her. Our child is going to grow up knowing they're loved, valued, and supported no matter what, because that's who you are." She wanted to believe him, spent the pregnancy working to believe him, catching herself every time an old pattern of thought emerged, every time she heard Margaret's voice in her head telling her she'd fail at this too. But she also watched how the community rallied around her, how Martha started knitting baby clothes, how Anna insisted on being present for the birth, how Riker transformed a bedroom into a nursery with his own hands. This baby would have what she never did, a whole community of people ready to love and support them. The birth came in late December, appropriately dramatic. Labor that lasted 14 hours, Evelyn cursing her medical knowledge because she knew exactly what was happening at every stage and couldn't do anything but endure it. Anna and Martha both attended, and Riker held her hand the entire time, white-faced but present. When her daughter finally arrived, small and red and screaming with impressive volume, Evelyn felt something crack open in her chest. Not break. Open. Like a door that had been locked for decades suddenly swinging wide. "She's perfect," Riker whispered, tears streaming down his face. "She's loud," Evelyn said, laughing and crying simultaneously. "Already stubborn, I can tell." They named her Charlotte after Evelyn's mother. A gift to a woman who died too soon. A promise to do better with this new life. Holding Charlotte, Evelyn thought about cycles and patterns and choices. She'd been given a template for motherhood that was toxic and cruel. But she didn't have to follow it. She could choose differently. Could be gentle where Margaret was harsh, supportive where Margaret was critical, loving where Margaret was cold. Breaking a cycle was hard. required constant vigilance, constant choice. But Eveline had spent 3 years choosing her own path over the one laid out for her. She could keep choosing. Charlotte grew, thriving under the combined attention of parents, extended community, and half a dozen unofficial aunts who treated the ranch house like their second home. Eveline's practice continued, though she cut back hours to spend time with her daughter. Anna took on more responsibility, eventually becoming skilled enough to handle most cases on her own. "You're building a legacy," Martha said, watching Anna treat a patient while Eveline supervised with Charlotte strapped to her chest. "Women helping women. Knowledge passed down. None of this existed before you got here." "I just did what needed doing." "Stop saying that like it diminishes what you've accomplished. You changed this entire territory. Women here have options now because of you." That matters. It did matter. Eveline could see it in the young women who came to study, in the mothers who trusted her with their children's lives, in the community that had embraced a woman doing work society said she shouldn't do. She'd changed things. Not alone, never alone, the community had made it possible, but she'd been the catalyst. Years passed. Charlotte grew into a bright, confident child who followed Eveline on medical calls and asked endless questions. More students came and went, some staying to practice medicine throughout the territory. The ranch prospered. Eveline's reputation grew until people traveled from other states to consult with the woman doctor who'd made a name for herself in Colorado. Through it all, not a single letter from Boston. Her father sent nothing. Celeste sent nothing. The rest of the family acted as if Eveline had never existed. And Eveline found she preferred it that way. She built a life they couldn't touch, raised a daughter they'd never know, made a difference they'd never understand. On the 5th anniversary of her arrival in Colorado, Eveline stood on the porch watching sunrise paint the mountains gold and pink. Charlotte was sleeping inside. Riker was already out with the cattle. The medical building stood sturdy beside the house. Somewhere in town, Anna was probably treating a patient using skills Eveline had taught her. 5 years ago, she'd been a punchline, a cruel joke designed to embarrass a frontier rancher and humiliate an unwanted daughter. Now she was a doctor, a wife, a mother, a teacher, a cornerstone of her community. The transformation hadn't been magical or smooth. It had been brutal and messy and painful. She'd fought for every inch of ground, questioned herself at every turn, battled doubt and fear and old wounds that never quite healed completely. But she'd done it. Built a life worth living from the scraps her family had thrown away. Martha appeared on the porch, coffee in hand. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep. Too much thinking." About? About how strange it is that the worst thing that ever happened to me, being sent here as a joke, turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Martha sipped her coffee. "I don't think that's strange at all. Sometimes the thing we think will destroy us actually sets us free. Your family thought they were getting rid of a problem. Really, they were giving you permission to finally live." Eveline nodded slowly. "I spent so long trying to earn their love, their approval, their basic respect. And I never could, no matter what I did. Out here, I stopped trying, just started being myself, and that was enough. More than enough. You're exactly who this place needed." As the sun climbed higher, Eveline thought about the girl who'd stepped off that train, scared, hurt, convinced she was heading toward another rejection. That girl had been right to be scared. The journey ahead of her was going to be harder than anything she'd faced before, but it was also going to be worth it. Because the frontier didn't care about Boston's definitions of worth, didn't care about pretty faces or proper manners or family names. The frontier cared about what you could do, who you helped, how you showed up when things got hard. And Eveline had shown up. Every single day for 5 years she'd shown up. Her family had sent her west believing she would fail. They'd placed bets on how quickly she'd come crawling back, how thoroughly she'd be humiliated, how completely the joke would land. They'd been wrong about all of it, because the joke wasn't on Eveline or Riker or anyone in Colorado. The joke was on the people who'd been too blind to see what they had when they had it, too cruel to recognize value when it stood right in front of them, too small to imagine that a woman they'd labeled worthless might actually be worth everything. Eveline Callahan stood on her porch watching the day begin, her daughter sleeping inside, her practice thriving, her life full of purpose and love and choice. And she knew, deep in her bones knew, that the woman Boston had thrown away had become exactly who she was always meant to be.
not in spite of being rejected, but because of it. Sometimes the best thing family can do for you is let you go, give you the freedom to find out who you are when nobody's telling you who you should be. Eveline's family had done that, though not intentionally, and she'd taken that freedom and built an empire from it. Not of wealth or status or the things they valued, an empire of purpose, of healing, of women helping women, of breaking cycles and choosing differently, of proving that worth isn't given, it's claimed. The sun rose fully now, flooding the valley with light. A new day. Another chance to choose who she wanted to be. Eveline chose to be exactly herself. Stubborn, imperfect, still learning, still growing, still fighting old demons. But free. Finally, completely, undeniably free. And that made all the difference.